Hi, good morning, everyone. So we begin with our first session of the June events, that is from Bangalore chapter on enabling an organization to learn. I request the moderator, Mr. Rajashekar Janaswamy, to take over.
So, okay, let's get started. It's 10 a.m. Welcome everyone. Welcome to today's session from me and I. I'm Rajshekar Janaswamy, and I'll be the moderator for today's panel discussion. Today we have a very interesting set of panelists. Combined experience probably for this panel is 65 to 70 years together. So as I welcome them, let me introduce you to the topic today. So today's topic is about enabling an organization to learn, right? So the world around us is changing and evolving, and therefore learning and development assumes greater significance if we need to evolve and if we need to survive, right? If we need to be able to be relevant, learning and development becomes extremely key. So every organization that I've worked for in the past and currently has talked about learning and development as one of the key focus areas. And significant amounts of money and time and effort is spent on these trying to help with learning and development across the organization. So today we have the fellow panelists, and with these fellow panelists, we will try to understand what does it take to enable learning in an organization. So first, let me introduce the panelists. So the first person that I would like to ask to introduce herself is Manvi. Please go ahead.
Okay, so good morning, everyone. So my name is Manvi Pathak, and I am currently working with Trent, which is Tata Retail. I head the talent and leadership development at Trent. I have over 20 years of experience in the field of talent management and leadership development. And some of the organizations with whom I have worked in the past are the Big Four consulting firms like KPMG, PwC, and Cipla. And I have spent most of my time has been in these areas like talent leadership, executive coaching, and more recently I am got very much interested in the field of learning technology. So I'm very passionate about cross cultural learning and innovations in the field of learning technology. I'm very happy to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Manvi. Gunjan, would you introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, Rajshekar, and thank you for having me. Very happy to be here. Good morning, everyone. My name is Gunjan Zutshi, and currently I am a co-founder of a company called Agile Sattva Consulting. And our work is primarily in the area of change and transformation, including agile implementation and transformation in organizations. Before starting my consulting practice in 2015, I have spent over 25 years in different organizations working in the field of sales and marketing. That's where I started my career, and then moving into learning and development and change. My last assignment was with a large multinational ITS company as head of talent management and organization development. So that's what I do. I'm also a certified coach with ICF and a psychotherapist with a private practice in Bangalore. So looking forward to today's discussion on the panel.
Next, I would like to invite Prem to introduce himself.
Thank you, Rajshekar. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am Prem Gangadhar. I'm currently working in TCS as a consulting partner in the enterprise agile practice. As a consulting partner, my responsibility would be to engage with customers for large enterprise agile transformations. Now, I've been here for a while now, and I have about 25 years of experience in IT. I have been into consulting, providing consulting services through TCS for various customers across the globe, and it's been about maybe 15 years since I started, in the consulting space. I have a team of people for whom I am responsible for capability development, competency development, and leveraging them to engage with customers for enterprise agile transformations. Now, prior to joining TCS, I was with GE, and that is synonymous with the Lean Six Sigma ways of working. So that's how I started my journey into the agile space. It was a natural progression for me to move from Lean Six Sigma into enterprise agility. And I've been very passionate about agile ways of working, lean methodologies, and so on. And that's what has kept me motivated to be in the consulting space, providing services for enterprise agile transformations to our customers. Thank you, Rajshekhar.
Great. Welcome on board this panel discussion, all of you. And let's start the discussion. So I have, before I start, right, so I want to understand what are the overarching goals that you see when it comes to organizational learning, right? So this would be an open question to all three panelists. Anybody who wants to contribute anything unique that you have observed with respect to the overarching goals that come that are there with respect to organizational learning, feel free to elaborate more. So it's over to you folks. What are the goals that you're seeing when it comes to organizational learning?
Can I go ahead?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. Let me start with the pandemic. If you see retail, I belong to the, I'm from the retail sector. So retail sector has been badly impacted both in the first wave as well as in the second wave. And there have been layoffs, there have been store closures. And on the positive side, if you see what has happened is there were few trends which got accelerated due to the pandemic. So very broadly, few changes which have happened in the retail sector is that the retail business model has changed or is changing for not only for my organization, for overall retail sector. Business is actually looking at rethinking the cost of actually doing business. Then the customer choice has also become very, very important. So what has happened is that all this has happened in a very short span of time, and there has been no time to wait and watch. And there is need to reimagine the way we do things. And retail, especially in the L&D, we've realized that this is not a time to ride out the storm, and we have to be very, very proactive and progressive when it comes to by either reskilling people or having people ready for this new era of customer experience that the future is going to offer. So the pandemic has rewritten the rules of retail, and few things that we have clearly we are focusing on as L&D is that the digital design and delivery of training programs, having very highly targeted programs which are completely linked to the business goals, very high quality learner experience, learner experience which is you make learning available anytime, learning with the flow of work, personalizing learning and collaborative learning is something also that we are looking at, and learning which is also focused on the future of work. So this is my take on this particular question. Thank you.
Any other panelists want to add?
Yes, Rajshekhar, if I may add, and I think Manvi gave a very, a nice view of current trends and what's happening, especially in the sector that we do. I wanted to take a little broader view also of goals for learning, right, as organizations. I think in my experience of working with organizations and our own everyday experience of learning, right, we all learned to adapt in the last 1.5 years to the pandemic. So I think learning is quite central to human beings. It's really, I mean, because our survival depends on it. So I think for organizations, a big goal is of learning, any learning is to be able to manage change. And our ability as individuals and our ability as organizations to continue to be effective in changing situations, in ambiguous situations. So because learning is what allows us to change, uh, as times change. So just taking a, little further view, really, that all organizations expect some change to happen, and therefore the two go hand in hand. And that's how I would also like to look at this aspect of what are goals for learning for an organization or an individual.
Yeah,
Great.
Rajshekhar, if I may add a few points as well. No, I completely agree with what Manvi and Gunjan have been saying, and particularly the points that Manvi mentioned in terms of collaborative learning. I think what is moving towards in terms of achieving the goal of collaborative learning. It's not about having specialized individuals in the organization, but it is more to do with having people sharing sharing the culture of problem solving. Because at the end of the day, it is all about learn fast. So that's what the industry is moving to. And Manvi also mentioned about digital design, and that's another area as well where organizations are looking towards in terms of learning modes. As generations change, the learning habits change as well. So we used to learn through classroom sessions, but the Gen Z now wants to learn online. They want nano videos. They want quick, shorts, snap videos to learn things very quickly. They may be, traveling in a bus. That 10 or 15 minutes, they will want to watch a small video and learn from it. So that's the learning culture and the mood that has changed, I think. So the organizations are looking towards having providing goals in terms of capability building, capacity, in terms of contributing to culture, a learning culture as well, right? Makes it important for the organization.
Perfect.
So just
So,
thoughts on that. Yeah, sorry.
yeah, so I heard a couple of things which says learning enables change in an organization. Yeah, Manvi, you talked about how retail was impacted and how it is adapting to what changes were thrown at them from COVID. And Prem, you talked about the micro learning and people wanting to have micro videos, and the attention spans have also changed. But then let me related to this topic, right? Does learning enable agility in an organization, or what is the connection that you see between organizational learning and agility?
Yeah, so let me take that question, Rajshekhar. And I strongly believe organization learning enables organizational agility. And I personally want to quote certain points that Peter Senge has mentioned in his book, The Fifth Discipline. He calls about 5 characteristics of a learning organization. And they're very closely related to the agile culture. So they directly or indirectly drive agile mindset and agile behaviors in the organization. The characters that he's mentioning in his book, The Fifth Discipline, is about attaining personal mastery, in the sense that the expectation is that the individuals are to have knowledge, about in their respective areas, a deeper knowledge in their respective areas, and have individuals transform into a T-shaped skill individual rather than an I-shaped skill. So they have the stem of the T being a deeper learning experience and a subject matter expertise, and then the horizontal being more other areas that they would want to cross skill themselves. So personal mastery is expected for them to provide some kind of a motivation and a satisfaction to the work that they're doing, and that would in turn drive kind of a butterfly effect for them to perform better and get involved into problem solving areas. And this is absolutely one of the areas where agile, though, is not asking for kind of SMEs, but still it is driving, it is looking at individuals having personal excellence in one of the areas or so that they get self motivated. The other is the second point that he mentions is in terms of having ability to fail fast and learn from it. So he mentions about creating minimum viable products rather than making assumptions on and having big, roadmaps to design something big. He says experiment and learn from them faster. So this is another trait of agile as well. Then the third point he mentions is in terms of feedback loops. Feedback loops in terms of having 360-degree feedback. Now in GE, we used to have something called skip level feedback, where I give feedback on my supervisor to his supervisor, right? And this is not feedback from a point of view of saying what he's not doing well or what he or she is not doing well. It is about giving areas where things could be improved in the overall ecosystem, and that is used in a constructive way to develop the individuals. So that would be one of them. The other thing is also recording videos of the individuals performing, so they themselves learn from it from a point of view of self-assessment. Now these traits are very core to agile. And then he talks about having a common vision for the team. So having a common vision drives individuals towards a common goal, and then the teams can collaborate together. So these kind of learning objectives within a learning organization creates a sense of agility, creates a sense of agile mindset and agile behaviors for the teams to work together, collaborate together. It gives that psychological safety for them to fail and not being afraid of saying, okay, if I fail, will it impact my performance appraisal? So because the organization is expecting you to fail and then stretch your boundaries from that comfort zone, now go out and learn from that. So and hence I believe the traits of a learning organization are very, very core to an agile organization, and hence learning organizations definitely are agile organizations. They're very nimble, in my opinion and experience.
Perfect. So anybody else who wants to add to what Prem has mentioned? Gunjan?
I think Prem, I think Prem has very nicely, covered this, the question that you asked. Maybe only addition I want to do to that is, there are two words, right? Learning and agility. And then there is the combination, learning agility, right? So agility is, of course, our ability to move faster, learn faster, etc. And then learning as a process itself is about, enhancing skills, capability, knowledge, so that we can change what we change. So I think to look at them, and when the two combine together, our ability to learn and our ability to learn fast, I think that's learning agility, right? And a lot of what Prem referred to was, to my mind, it's about that learning agility, which can be an individual trait. So how I as an individual learn, what's my learning agility?
Exactly.
And it could also be an organization trait. Collectively, how as an organization we learn, what's our ability and agility to learn together, and then agility to work fast and learn. So I think it's interesting for me, just the interplay of these two words and how when they come together, what emerges as learning agility.
Yep. So we talked about, and I think you've hinted at learning agility. So let me come to that question that I had in mind around, is learning dependent on traits of an individual, or is it a function of people and their traits? Is this something that as organizations we need to keep in mind, or organizational leaders need to keep in mind?
Yeah. In fact, there was a McKinsey report a while ago, which listed down competencies for future. And one of the top competency there was learning agility, as individuals. So I think for organizations to be mindful of what is that ability we have as individuals or people we are hiring, right? So when you onboard, what do you look for? Do you only look for functional competence, or do you also look for ability to change? Because what I know today is not going to be what I need to know tomorrow. I'll have to learn something else very quickly. So that learning agility is certainly a function of my individual traits. I can just take a simple example. When I finished my master's, I remember, throwing away my books and saying, "Oh, I'm never going to learn anything again. I'm done with my learning." And then my last 25 years have been nothing but learning every single day. So I think learning agility is a trait. It is absolutely critical and important, because without that, organizations for tomorrow will not be able to survive. And I'm going to, have Prem and Manvi add to that.
Yeah, Manvi.
Yeah, so I'd like to add, something to what Gunjan has, very nicely explained. So when you ask the question that, is organizational learning a function of people's traits? So trait, if you see, is a predisposition to behave in a particular way or to have certain preferences. And clearly there are certain traits which actually make people more inclined or quick or curious to learn. So, Gunjan has already spoken about learning agility. I would like to add on the trait part, which is curiosity. So, if you see, curiosity is a trait which a lot of organizations look for. Either they have it as a part of their competency framework, or they look for these specific personality trait when they are hiring people. So curiosity basically involves a lot of energy, dedication, and intellectual effort. It basically means that your brain loves to learn and you are actually very curious about knowing and learning new things. And research has also shown that curious people are more likely to innovate, and they are more likely to adapt. And I'd like to mention another study which was similar to what Gunjan mentioned. There was a PwC study which a lot of CEOs had participated, where they had mentioned curiosity and open-mindedness as some of the leadership traits that are going to become increasingly critical in demanding times. And if you see, a lot of the world that we are in right now, the VUCA world, uh, uh, today's a lot of success in today's world will depend upon uh, experimentation, boldness, and willingness to try new things. And the reactionary thinking that we all have been doing will get us into problem. So the world that we are experiencing right now is too complicated to just rely on conventional wisdom and familiarity. So it is very important that we have curiosity. So curiosity and learning agility are two things which are going to become very important. And organization, especially if you have a organizational culture where these kind of individuals will thrive, you should actually hire such individuals.
Perfect.
Thanks.
So I heard two things. Curiosity, I heard about learning agility and people with those traits really helping organizations learn and move forward. But then what cultural and structural elements are required in organizations to enable people, once they come on board with these traits, to continue to work and continue to learn and continue to grow and helping the organization grow?
Okay, let me to answer that. As we were talking about learning agility and individual traits, I could almost hear the question in my head, and I'm thinking even in heads of people who are listening to us. Okay, that's great. I have the agility to learn. What about the organization? Does it allow for learning? Is it a place which nurtures curiosity? Is it a place which nurtures, failures, in the sense that it's safe to fail and learn and move on from there? So I think it's very, very important, the collective aspect of learning. And that's cultural, right? Do the organization has a mindset to learn? And I'm not talking about just formal learning, Rajshekhar. I think we put a lot of emphasis on structured formal learning, attending learning programs, having LMS, having learning IDPs, yeah, which is great way to learn. But I think learning as a mindset and culture goes way beyond it. And organizations need to have structures in place, uh, formal as well as informal. I think a lot of culture is informal, right? So, for example, even in Agile, you may have a retrospective defined as a way of working, but what happens in that retrospective? Is it just becoming, something that we do a review, or 30 minutes we have to do it, or we go back, or we use it as a learning place, right, where we are learning from what happened? Do management or leadership reviews become about nice presentations? right? And just doing a status update, or they really become places of talking about what are we doing? What did we learn? How can we do this differently? That has to be nurtured by leadership of the organization. Communities of practice, that's a great place for people to learn, because a lot of knowledge is tacit. A lot of learning in organization is tacit. So I think unless organizational structures and mindset come meet the individual agility to learn, it may just not work in that sense. Yeah. And let me pause here and see what other panelists have to say.
Prem, Gunjan, anything?
Sorry, Manvi, are you trying to say something?
I'd like to just add to what Gunjan said, and I think she's beautifully put that how the structure has to be an enabler for all this individual capabilities and mindset that people have. I'll just like to mention something that I read. Josh Bersin has spoken about it, and he has said that high performing organizations, especially in digital age, they operate as empowered networks. Okay, so there is a strong culture of collaboration that is driving the companies forward, and whether it's through the removal of management layers or through the adoption of agile work processes, he feels that L&D, learning and development, which is very individual focused, and even digital learning is not very collaborative in nature. So L&D actually has to look at ways to be in sync with the shifting demands of the organization. And few of the things that he has mentioned is that learning has to be, especially in today's world, especially when we are looking at hybrid working, remote working, designing collaborative learning strategy is going to become very, very important. And he's talked about few things like, we have to move from the individual mindset to a team mindset. We have to be very thoughtful and deliberate about designing a collaborative learning strategy. And we also have to look beyond the standard matrices, which can make an impact. So that's from my side.
Great.
Yeah, I
So,
think Gunjan and
go ahead,
Manav as well. I mean, it's absolutely required for the organization to enable such culture and structural elements for the individuals to learn. In this hyper distributed world, you need that structure and guidance for the team to learn. So I couldn't agree more with what Gunjan and Manvi said.
Yes. So there is often the thought that when we speak to people, right, the one thing that comes up is organization learning is owned by HR or people team or L&D. Is that correct? Or what are your thoughts about it? The
So
ownership lies with a certain group.
Yeah. Let me take that question, Rajshekhar. And I'm talking about this from my own experience doing a program for a telecom customer in Belgium. This is a customer who wanted to be enterprise-wide across the organization. And quite to our surprise, this program was driven by the HR, not by the CIO. So this experience that I'm talking about, where the program was driven by the chief HR officer, and he reported directly to the CEO, of course. The program was to create high-performing organizations. And what we noticed was that the HR, the responsibility for the individual's learning or the organization learning was not just owned by one group or one individual, but it was a triad. The HR owned it, the L&D team owned it, and as much as they too owned it, the individual also owned it. Because as I think Manvi and Gunjan said, it is the attitude, the learning attitude, which Manvi mentioned about curiosity and attitude to fail and learn and stuff like that, right? So in this particular case, the HR gave the guiding philosophy of what the organization should be learning in line with the business objectives, the whole infrastructure for them to learn, and then the incentives to learn, the purpose to learn. Why should we learn something new being in this organization, right? The purpose to learn, the incentives to learn, and the career paths for them to learn. And if they did so and did well, then they would move to the next grade. So the entire infrastructure and the purpose of learning was established by the HR team, and they closely worked with the L&D team, because the L&D team was now going to give you that tools to learn. The courses that we were talking about in terms of whether it's an agile course or non-agile technology courses or whatever. The learning platforms were provided by L&D, learning modes were decided by L&D, and the HR provided that philosophical guidance in terms of what the learning organization should be providing, to enable people in the organization to learn. And then it was up to the individual. Now you have a buffet of things to pick from based on your own career path, based on what the organization objectives were and the common vision that is set by the CEO himself. It is now up to the individual to pick and choose what areas that he wants to learn and how he wants to learn them. Now, unless these three came together, the learning would not happen in the organization. That's what we felt. Of course, we did have some kind of a measure to measure, how much learning happened and how did they retain that knowledge, how did they implement that knowledge and all that. That came in close collaboration, first working with the L&D team. Unless the three of them owned, the accountability always lied with the individual to learn. The responsibility always lied with the HR and the L&D team to provide that infrastructure and opportunities for the individuals to learn. So from that experience, I feel that it is a triad rather than an individual's ownership. I'll let Gunjan and Manvi contribute, if they have a different perspective.
So I think, Prem, you very clearly put this as differentiating the responsibility between the training or the HR or L&D, and then the accountability on the individual to take stuff. Gunjan, Manvi, you were saying something. I saw both of you unmute yourself.
I think he's covered almost everything. The only thing that which is already covered is that L&D has to align with the business goals. So in the sense, whatever we are doing has to have. Traditionally, L&D was seen more as a activity based things that you do, even if it's not related to the business. But now it has to have alignment to the business goals. That becomes very important. Yeah.
So we have an audience question that is coming up, and this question is very specific to you, Prem. With implementation of nano learning, are we not creating a culture of crash courses where the learner will only learn so that they can get a good score in an interview or pass a certain exam or something like that?
Well, yes and no, but as I said, because learning is all about the attitudes and the curiosity part that Manvi was talking about, right? I can use nano videos to, more like to get an awareness to a particular topic. I can't, become a subject matter expert by just looking at a nano video. It kind of gives you a sampler and then an idea of how things would probably work. So it helps you more on the cross skill, the horizontal bar of the T-shaped skill rather than the stem. Now you pick and choose. Once you get used to that, or once you get once you have some understanding of that particular topic by watching the nano video, then you have to decide to go in further to deep dive into that particular topic, and that's where attitude comes into picture. It is that attitude to learn for continuous learning or continual learning that Gunjan was talking about. We never learning didn't stop soon after we graduated. In fact, learning accelerated and it increased much more after we graduated, and the opportunities to learn and fail have been more. So in my opinion, to cut the long story short, I think nano videos are just samplers and not as crash courses. It just gives you and increases your appetite to learn more, and you can choose. If something is not aligned to a career path, you can stop and then go to another area. So that's how you should look at nano videos, I guess.
Rajshekhar, if I may add to that.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I think it's we have to look at learning modalities also to relate with what am I trying to learn. Right. So a nano video is a great thing to learn if I want to know about something, which is what Prem was referring to. I'll know something, but it's not going to be enough for me to maybe change a behavior, right? So behavior change requires practice. Skill building requires practice. I have to keep doing it. So I think to look at how I'm learning also in relationship with what am I trying to learn, and all learning in the end must culminate in some change. Otherwise, actually, learning is not, we'll say learning hasn't happened because there is no change. I'm continuing to do what I was doing earlier, or I'm continuing to think in the way I was thinking earlier, right? So that would be a good way to look at it. Just to take a metaphor, right? We also call it bite-sized learning, right? Now you can call it BYTE bite or BITE bite, but if you just take a bite, it will only fulfill you so much,
Mhm.
right? You need a full meal to feel, to satiate your hunger. So I guess that's how we have to look at our learning. We can have small bites, which will be good for a while, but we need something more substantive if we really want learning to be deepened.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, since you mentioned about bite and measurements, right? One of the audience questions that has come up, and this is something that I also had in mind to ask you, is what are the measures of success for learning programs in organizations, and are there any frameworks that they use? How do you measure that so much investment has gone in, and what are the returns? How do you determine the returns?
Uh, is this something I can take start off with, and
Right.
maybe Gunjan, Manvi can add?
Sure.
Um, uh, and I'm talking again from my experience with the telecom customer in Belgium. So when you are implementing a learning program for an organization, you got to measure. And what we were using over there, and at least proposed to use over there, was something, a model that is pretty widely used across the industry, and it's called Kirkpatrick's model of evaluation. Um, it is a pyramid that measures bottom up from the team level all the way to the return on investment to a level. The apex of the pyramid is the return on investment. So what this model does is at the bottom of the pyramid, it looks for reactions when you do training, right? Because the learning in this particular case always started through training in classrooms or online courses or watching nano videos. So during at the end of the course, you would check if the what was the reaction of the trainees. Like, did the learners enjoy the training? And for that you would look for feedback, and feedback on the content, feedback on training delivery, feedback on the trainer themselves. So that's the bottom of the pyramid. So that would indirectly impact their learning interest, and then we go into the next step where we see how much of information or content they have retained after the training. So you would normally do a quick assessment, like a test, as an exit test after the training, or an exit or some kind of a test after a week or so. Like Scaled Agile does that, after they do the sessions, they give you a certification exam after a certain period of time, right? So that kind of tells you how much you have acquired in terms of your knowledge that you have gone through in the training, and how much of self-learning you have done, and of course the retention of that knowledge. Now, it's not enough, as Gunjan said, you acquired that knowledge is not just enough, because there's no change that is happening. It is the reuse of that knowledge, or the use of that knowledge is to be measured. And how do you do that is, how are they actually using that knowledge in the program? So there you do certain feedbacks, like the agile maturity assessments. How mature, how are they practicing agile practices in the team level and across the programs and so on. So, and from that reuse of that training and learning, you see what kind of results the team is getting. So that could be your sprint end goals, the values that you have contributed at the end of the program increments that you have implemented, and so on. And finally, how did that program increment result in achieving the business goal is the return on investment that you look for. So it is this 5-layered pyramid model that we use, and I think many of our audience would have been familiar to it. It's called the Kirkpatrick's model of evaluation, and we were trying to use that. Now, whether TCS uses something similar may not be, But at least when we do enterprise agile transformation for our customers, we try to use some variant of this particular model.
Gunjan, Manvi, anything that you want to add?
Yeah, I think it's a standard model, and most of the organizations follow that, and it's very popular. And as I agree with what Gunjan had mentioned earlier, that behavior change is going to be the main uh, to actually to gauge that learning has happened, to understand that the person has actually, and in today's context where we are focusing on certain new behaviors that organizations are, whether it's digital dexterity, or you are looking at people management skills or handling remote teams, how well are you doing it, how well are you adapting yourselves to it. The it's best to understand it through the behavioral change, so that is going to be our metric for change.
Yeah.
Okay.
And collectively, Rajshekhar, I mean, these are ways to how we can look for the formal learning, right? Return on investment, etc. But if we were to look collectively as how do we assess if as an organization we are learning, collectively. I think I'm going back to what Prem had spoken about, Peter Senge's reference to feedback loops, and I think to how quickly are we beginning to do things differently? How quickly do we learn from our mistakes as an organization? That is a good indicator of, many times in organizations you'll hear we keep talking about, oh, this is what we are not getting right, but for years we will be talking about this is what we are not getting right. Or every meeting is about, how we are not able to do. So how are we doing that? I think to me that's a good way for organizations to look at it. Are we learning faster from what we are experiencing from our experiences, not necessarily failures? Actually, are we learning faster from our experiences? That is a good and you can't put a number to it, but you will know when that is happening. And I know that many a times we get caught with that, oh, but there has to be an ROI. Maybe there is another word to look at it, and that is ROE, and I find it very useful. Return on expectation, right? What is our expectation in the organization? I think our expectation is that we will be able to learn faster. So I think sometimes measuring ROE is also good enough, along with measuring the ROI.
And Prem, the model that you referred to, some of the audience is asking for links to that, and we will share these links in a bit. If you guys get a chance as panelists, as I ask the question, if you can paste that in, that will really help in the chat. Okay. So next question that I have is around, now that we've heard about various metrics, we have heard about the culture, what are the top 3 challenges or top 2 challenges that you see that inhibit learning in an organization? What has been your experience with these challenges, and why would you rate them top 1 or top 2? Manvi, you want to say something?
Yes, so challenges are there, and I think it is mostly to do with the learning culture of the organization. So, 2, 3 challenges that come to my mind. First is that the key stakeholders aren't, fully involved, in the sense that we don't get a complete buy-in from them when it comes to building a culture of learning in the company. Second is the learning brand that you have is not that credible, in the sense that how many of your organizational leaders would recommend the program to their peers, or how many of the organizational leaders are satisfied with the overall effectiveness of the L&D programs. Okay. Then third is that learning is not recognized and rewarded at your organization. How many times, I have seen in my previous organizations and also in the consulting work that I have done, that managers, whenever a hypo potential team member is going for some kind of a program, and that time everything used to be classroom, and they would say that, okay, why are you going, and this is something, is so much of waste of time. Many times people don't, even the attitude of the reporting managers is not very, very conducive. And last of all is that you don't have enough support or resources to implement the culture of learning. So how many of the organizations are actually spending now? In fact, right now, if you see, we have seen two waves, and a lot of organizations have cut on the training budgets. But I have also seen that progressive organizations have actually not put a stop on capability development. So these things are one of the challenges that inhibit learning.
Okay. Gunjan, do you want to add anything?
I think what Manvi said is quite to the point. It is really about the mindset that we have around learning. Whether it is my individual mindset that I think, so often we think, oh, this is all I need to learn because this is relevant to my job. That mindset itself can stop us from truly learning, because learning is way beyond my jobs. In fact, we know that, right? A lot of innovation or a lot of out of box thinking happens at intersections of disciplines, intersections of knowledge. Now, that intersectionality is only possible if I'm open to learning. Right? So I think a biggest roadblock is mindset, individual mindset as well as collective. Um, and I'm not saying it jokingly, but sometimes we have this mindset of we are like this only as an organization. It's a often quoted saying, we are like that only. Yes, we are like that, but the whole idea of learning is we also learn to be different, because that is what is needed now. So I'm just standing on what Manavi was saying. It's really about mindsets. They become the biggest blocker. Not that there is a dearth of good L&D programs or structures or LMS systems or ways of learning, even money, I guess resources also. But if I don't have the mindset, that's going to be the key.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
I
Prem,
would
go
agree
ahead.
completely. Yeah, I would agree to what Gunjan said completely, because unless you have that learning mindset, you wouldn't be able to stretch beyond your comfort zones. Almost always, learning happens when you come outside the comfort zone, and you unless you come out of that, you wouldn't learn. So I always felt the biggest inhibitor is my own apprehension to learn new things, my own fear. It could be related to a psychological safety factor as well, but my own fear that if I leave certain things that I am doing today and explore new areas, maybe that will impact my career, maybe that would impact my compensation in the organization and so on. So I think it's always within me as the biggest inhibitor. And because the organization, more or less, most of them do provide that infrastructure to learn. um, and because unless they provide that infrastructure, new skills or new people will not be joining the organization. Yeah? Because people tend to join learning organizations, and people tend to stick on to learning organizations. So you invariably have that infrastructure. What is missing is that mindset that Gunjan spoke about, uh, to explore new areas.
So great. So far, I think we've talked about what key goals are for the learning initiatives. We've talked about the culture that is required. We talked about mindset. We talked about some metrics and some measurements that we could actually put in place. Maybe since we are just about completing this session on time, one last question to you, right? How do people transition to be a learner, right? So Prem, you talked about psychological safety, but if somebody wants to make a change, what is that one tip that you would leave with the audience today as we conclude this session that will help them move to a lifelong learner kind of a mindset?
Well, for me, there's nothing as transition to a learner, because every individual is learning every day, every moment. It is just that if they have to make a significant shift and make a change in their way of life and change that culture, they've got to come beyond the boundaries of their comfort zone. Like I said earlier, that is the primary inhibitor from what I have experienced myself and what I have seen with people within my team. And what I have noticed is that because of that, there are certain learners who are wanting to learn more, and they're more frequently asking for investment on their certifications and so on and so forth. And there are certain people who don't even want to learn in the entire, they just say, okay, I'm fine, I'm doing what I'm doing, and I'm happy with that. So they tend to stick to their comfort zones unless we push and we have a goal for them, saying in the year you got to spend so many days of learning days, and demonstrate your own upskilling and cross-skilling. So that is the way we mandate people who are by choice not proactive learners. But the transition from proactive, from kind of reactive learning to proactive learning is always within ourselves, because that unless we want to learn, there's no learning that's going to happen. So that's how I would want to.
So Gunjan, you are a practicing psychologist as well. So anything that you would like to add on how we can help people, that one tip that you would like to give to people?
Yeah, I think it goes back to what Manvi had spoken about in the beginning. The most significant thing is our curiosity, our ability to just be curious moment to moment. I'm assuming that, I can see 58 people here. We were curious about something. That's why we came here. And they are curious about something, so they will attend other sessions. So that is really the way to be. Every moment, am I curious about whatever is happening around me? I think then I'm learning. Yeah, then I will find ways of learning. Then I'll find opportunities for learning. Yeah, so be curious. Be curious.
Manvi, any last comments?
Yes. So I share this example with with a group of, young managers, that there was this future of work report, and which said that, that this report came in 2018, which said that we will need 101 days of extra learning to be competitive in 2022. This was World Economic Forum. So, and this was pre-pandemic. Okay. So right now, I'd like to bring this point again, that, 101 days of extra learning, and with the chaos and, confusion and the complexity that we are dealing right now, we cannot be complacent. We cannot be unresponsive. We have to take ownership of our learning. And there is plenty of information which is available. You need to be more intentional and prioritize your learning. That's it.
Perfect. So thank you to all of you, Prem, Gunjan, Madhavi. Thank you very much, Manvi, sorry. And your insights, I'm sure the audience would have loved that.